to be a part of today's webinar. Look, just by looking at the esteemed panelists, there's a virtual treasury over here, and I'm sure all the participants must also be equally excited to have these subject experts with us. As always, it is also a great pleasure to be a part of a webinar series that is in collaboration between Sphere India Academy and ICARS, because the topics are always very well chosen, very timely, very relevant. As we are all aware, and also as Gursimran was saying, um, glacial lake outburst floods um, can cause a lot of loss and damage, whether it is tangible or intangible. And most of the time, it is also accompanied by environmental harm, especially in mountainous regions like Himalayas, Andes, and Alps. Especially downstream communities seem to be particularly vulnerable since there's a lot of momentum involved when the floodwaters start to flow. In fact, the Himalayan terrain with its steep mountains, growing mountains, is particularly vulnerable to this kind of flooding. Some papers, in fact, also mention that Sikkim Himalayas region now boasts more than 300 glacial lakes. I'm sure our experts would be having more up-to-date and more relevant information regarding this. It's said that out of those 300 glacial lakes, 10 have been identified as very much susceptible to outburst floods. In fact, a couple of years back, the South Lonak Lake in Sikkim led to a severe flooding in the Tista River. It is located at an altitude of 17,000 feet, and when it flowed down, it caused significant damage, including breach of the Chungthang Hydro Dam, as covered in the media. And there was a lot of loss and damage reported as well. We are very fortunate today that we have a very experienced panel of subject matter experts with us here from a diverse group of actors and responders just to discuss about this extremely critical issue. We have academicians, we have government representatives, we have practitioners, we have researchers, we have very, very experienced subject experts, and also people who are starting out. So we have a blend of youthful excitement along with very serious, experienced professionals. So I'm at least looking forward to this entire 1.5 hour session. Very excited, in a lot of excitement, that I'd be able to learn a lot, and there'll be a lot of takeaways as well. To address this kind of flooding, as we're all aware, a combination of advanced monitoring, early warning systems, and risk assessments is very, very essential. Community preparedness and effective disaster response is also very critical. So there should be a lot of collaboration and bringing our complementarity of strengths together on the same platform in order to reduce, mitigate the risks, and enhance community resilience. So to address these very, very critical issues, very, very timely, relevant issues, Sphere India Academy has come together with ICARS to organize today's webinar. And we would like to learn about the challenges and strategies for risk reduction and find the way forward along with our esteemed experts and explore the risks, hydrological and geotechnical modeling, mitigation strategies and techniques, including recent technological advancements, and most importantly, what are the lessons that has been learned already and what should be our way forward. My request to all participants would be to put their questions and comments on chat during the course of the technical sessions so that we can have them at hand when there is the open house space, and we can respond to them all together during that time. Our first speaker of the day is Professor Anil Kumar Gupta from ICARS, and it is always an enlightening experience to listen to Professor Gupta, who is our first speaker. You can also look at the chat to refer to his achievements, where Gursimran has already posted it, I think. I'd just like to mention briefly that Professor Gupta, who is representing ICARS IITR, is an expert in disaster mitigation and crisis management with a PhD and postdoctorate numerous projects, authored of numerous publications, and contributed to national disaster management plans. He collaborates with national and international organizations and specializes in risk analysis, disaster management planning, and local emergency preparedness, and has a lot of innovative ideas that he's putting into practice, including the children and youth network that he has been talking about in the last few webinars that I met him. So my request to you, sir, is if you could share to start off this webinar about the basic fundamentals underlying the glacial lake outburst flooding, their causes, their impacts, and the entire dynamics. Sir, since our session has a lot of esteemed panelists, I can only allocate 10 minutes to each speaker, and so you have 10 minutes to share your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank
Over
you.
to you, sir.
Thank you, Devdutta. First of all, my compliments to all who are part of this movement on thinking, talking, and caring about mountains, and in particular about glaciers. And GLOF is something that is the larger face of the challenges associated with the glaciers, because whenever there is an incident of glacial lake outburst flood, the entire humanity comes to know. Otherwise, there are several things that keep on taking place, and only the scientists which are working on cryospheres are the local people, are local administrators who are concerned about those areas. They only are aware about the cause of the glacial lake outburst flood. I think past recent incidences have already demonstrated, and people are aware that how this kind of glacial lake outburst flood can take place. But yes, there are theories and there are experiences about the triggers. Many times the microseismicity can also be a triggering factor, but the theory about the increase in the global temperature and the heating of the atmosphere is also one of the major contributors. And as now we realize that we have already reached to the level of 1.2 degree rise in the temperature, and the threat of 1.5 degree is very much looming. And even the discussions on 2.0 degree temperature rise, what kind of challenges would be there, in particular about the glaciers. Certainly, when we talk about the frequency of glacial lake outburst flood, whether it is increasing or not increasing, maybe sometimes a point of controversy or point of discussion, because the reporting also contributes a lot. Many times, the small GLOF may also get less reporting, or the people outside that local uh, particular area may not be aware. But whenever a major glacial lake outburst flood takes place, it is known through media, various reporting, and other research teams are also there. And when the human casualties or human sufferings are involved, then we have to send our responders, response agencies, including army, military, and in particular the response forces. So even if we are not sure that whether the lake outburst floods in number are increasing, or those are increasing in numbers also, but also in terms of the intensity or the impacts. The recent past incidences where we lost our hydropower plant, and this kind of incidences also tell that certainly the loss and damage in terms of economic impacts is going multifold, because our investment in infrastructure is increasing across all the sectors, and energy is one of the important sectors. Second is the road infrastructure for connectivity, and in hill areas we are putting a lot of investment in road infrastructure, also the rail infrastructure. Recently the major tunnel system and the railway in Jammu Kashmir has also been inaugurated, so these kind of new developments are there. So the vulnerable systems are also increasing, because the world is now seeing, along with the huge infrastructure development, so the infrastructure vulnerability also. What is important here, if we talk about the cause of any glacial lake outburst flood, which is also associated with the accelerated glacial melting. So, on one hand, we talk about the natural or climatic reason, or because of the accelerated the because of the contribution of the human-induced climate change, their implications. But equally important is other anthropogenic contributors, sometimes which are not adequately talked about. For example, atmospheric black carbon, or when it is a part of the cloud system, we say atmospheric black brown cloud, which also plays with the natural the laws of entropy, and then it causes more temperature to be trapped or to be absorbed by the glaciers, and then it helps accelerating the melting. Then many times the mountain areas, we find the claims that we have increased vegetation or increased forest cover or increased forest density also. But if we look at location where the forest increase has been observed, so if the forest expansion has been in the towards the high altitude, whether we consider it is a positive or negative sign, because the negative consequences of biodiversity or forest expansion in the high altitude areas, which are known to be uh, uh, perennially or seasonally covered by snow or ice. So I think that is a major concern, because ice do not breathe, but the plants breathe, and then there is certainly an accelerated trapping of heat. Then, considering these issues, it is also very important that when we plan about the monitoring and the studies related with our glaciers, what is the data frequency and what is the data analysis frequency, and how are we effectively the imminent danger. So I think that is very important, that we anticipate and have the capacity to provide the effective early warning. How do we do that? There are a lot of researches which are going on. How do we enable the better use of technology for this purposes, so that timely monitoring and time effective early warning past incidences, what has been realized that a local response system is the primary emergency resource. It takes long time, and so effectiveness is the most important. And other part other colleagues, other current status and preparedness of glacial lake outburst flood.
Professor
Hello, am I
Gupta,
audible? Am I
your
audible?
voice is going out sometimes, but now you
Am I?
are audible again.
Okay, okay. So I'm about to conclude. So in nutshell, what are the key recommendations? One is that, which is also the point 9 of the Honorable Prime Minister's 10-point agenda on disaster risk management, that the lessons of past disasters should not go waste, and which are in fact more critical in terms of the experiences of law. Many times, what happens that we are given a situation to face such kind of disasters. We draw the lessons, but lessons are not properly documented, analyzed, or integrated in the future planning process. When it comes to GLOF, there are common experiences across different GLOF scenarios, but there are differential experiences. The settings in infrastructure, the level of understanding of and the access of technology. There are many other dimensions, including governance and the systemic resilience. So we need to be very cautious that we study, draw the lessons in a time effective way, and prepare an advanced and much effective strategy. Currently, we are working for Sikkim. I am as a part of the Sikkim Commission on Glacial Hazards. That is giving us a lot of opportunity to understand the pros and cons, and also the need and opportunity of integrating various disciplines and various sectoral dimensions, not only for the Sikkim, but for the other states where the glaciers are there. And in general, and as a broad, when I say that protecting the glaciers would also have the broader system resilience as a whole, as a broad thematic focus. And so at the end, once again, I would like to compliment the Sphere India, all other speakers who are going to bring some case studies also. I'm really looking forward to listen to them, and my best wishes for successful success of this endeavor. Thank you very much, and over to you for taking the agenda forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta, and thank you for the wishes as well. Um, you know, uh, as I was listening to you, I was just thinking that accelerated glacial melting that you're talking about, the increasing intensity, and the severely adverse impact on economic well-being and infrastructure is actually very alarming, since loss of investment in public goods and services will eventually force us to regress instead of moving ahead on achieving the sustainable development indicators. We definitely need to understand what works well in response and recovery, and what really doesn't, to ensure that we can create effective pathways for improved community level adaptive capacity and preparedness. And definitely, effective early warning is very, very much a needed component for anticipatory action. And we do hope our next speaker can shed some light on the modeling aspects as well. We welcome Dr. Ashim Sattar. We are very fortunate to have you with us, sir. Dr. Ashim Sattar is an assistant professor at IIT Bhubaneswar, and he's a leading expert in this kind of flooding and glacier related hazards. He's also a member of the Sikkim Commission on Glacial Hazards and GAFAs. He has a PhD from IIT Roorkee, and his postdoctoral research and his work focuses on the Himalayan cryosphere, it seems, remote sensing based glacier modeling, and impacts of glacial lake outburst floods. Um, my request to you, sir, is if you could share about the hydrological and geotechnical modeling aspect of the glacial lakes outburst flooding with us. You have 10 minutes to share your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Anil sir. It's very nice to see you. So Anil sir and myself, we are in the Sikkim Commission for Glacier Hazards. So I would like to share my screen if it is possible.
Please feel free.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank Sphere India for inviting me for this important event. As we all know that 2025 has been declared as the International Year for Glacier Preservation, and 21st of March, that's today, I think it is the International Day for Glacier Preservation, and this is one of the day which is very important, and getting an opportunity where we talk about glacial lake outburst floods, which is a consequence of climate change and its impact on glaciers, is a great opportunity. So, well, I'd like to move on with very basics of what do we know about different spheres. So this is a very simple but yet very important schematic that basically tells you about how these different spheres are kind of interrelated. If you look into the hydrosphere, we have the atmosphere, lithosphere, enterosphere, and biosphere. And the blue circle here is the cryosphere. So any process and mechanism or changes that happens in the cryosphere in one way affects the processes and mechanisms in the other spheres as well. So we are affected by anthrosphere, where we people, where we humans are a part of this anthrosphere, are impacted by the processes and mechanisms of the cryosphere. Similarly, the hydrosphere is affected, the atmosphere is affected. So my point here is that any change that happens has a chain of effects that it can potentially cause in different domains or different spheres, and that's where it's very important to look into these interaction in terms of cryohazards or disasters, because they can have far-reaching impacts. So this schematic here tells you, what is sitting on top of everything. So if you look into this pyramid kind of a schematic, on the top you see the atmospheric drivers. Atmospheric drivers here would mean the temperature and the precipitation changes that's been going on, which we call climate change over a longer period of time. And these drivers are changing the mountain cryosphere. And the components of this cryosphere, when we talk about cryosphere, which is the sphere which has water in the frozen state, uh, you have these components of glaciers, permafrost, snow, lakes, and so on. So these drivers on the top, sitting on the top, that is changing, making the changes in the mountain cryosphere. And as a result, what do we have is the glacier hazards, which is in the form of floods, landslides, avalanches, or any other cascades, debris flows that we have been seeing uh, and then they also impact the livelihood. For example, the tourism industry, the water quality. So in one way, it is affecting uh, human lives and community at a greater scale. Well, before I move into the modeling part of what we have done recently and what lessons we have from the recent second floods, I would like to concentrate upon the impact of climate change in the Himalayas. We all know that we have the Himalayas here, extending from the northeast Arunachal Pradesh up to Jammu Kashmir, Ladakh. So here we have the Karakoram, where glaciers have been behaving differently over the past years, but there has been lately changes even in the behavior of the Karakoram glaciers. But overall, if you see, glaciers in the Himalaya are sensitive to rising temperatures. If you see this plot on the right, which shows you the temperature anomalies from 1950s to 2016, we see that the temperature anomaly in the Himalaya is comparatively more than the mainland India, which means that the glaciers are more exposed to elevated temperature in the higher altitudes, and that's where they're getting impacted. In which way? In a way that that's leading to the melting of these glaciers. So where do we see these glaciers melting? The modeling efforts over the years by different authors has shown that mass balance studies and other modeling efforts have shown that almost the entire Himalaya, you can see this, my cursor here, which shows negative mass balance, which means that majority of the glaciers in the entire Himalaya has been showing glacier mass loss, which means they're losing the mass, freshwater mass. So where are these glacier mass going? So it has to go somewhere. So either it is directly contributed to the major river systems, as you can see here, or it is trapped up in the mountains as glacial lakes. So you can see here a schematic showing how glacial melt can lead to when the water is blocked by a frontal moraine or a natural dam, the water is basically stored upstream. And as this glacier recedes, we have a bigger lake that forms with time. And so what is the population that is exposed? A very recent study has said that 3 million people in India is exposed to glacial lake outburst flood. So that is a huge number of community. It's a huge number of people that are exposed to to Glacial Lake outburst floods. So these are some of the statistics that have come out recently from recent studies, which is alarming and also tells us that it is high time to work towards it and start building resilience. What have we witnessed? We have witnessed several events in the past. Of course, in 2013, the Kedarnath disaster, the Chamoli River disaster in 2021, which was not a glacial lake outburst flood, but instead a rock ice avalanche that transformed into a debris flow. We had the 2016 transboundary GLOF, which originated in China and impacted Nepal. And most recently, we had the Sikkim floods, which originated as the Sikkim our South Lonak Lake outburst on the 3rd of October, and then a cascade of flood impacted the entire valley of Teesta. And this is on the backdrop. You can see the picture of the Teesta 3 hydropower, which was completely destroyed during this event, located in Chungthang, approximately 68 kilometers downstream of the South Lonak. A team of scientists came together, and then we tried to publish this paper. We also have a prominent speaker, Prabhakar Rai, Sri Prabhakar Rai here, who is also a co-author to this paper. And then this particular paper, we tried to look into details where I do not have much time to cover the entire story, but maybe a couple of slides that tells the importance of modeling and how do we go across reconstructing such events. So the October cascade, we all now know that it originated as a lateral moraine failure. If you can see my cursor, this is the South Lonak Lake, and there was a chunk of lateral moraine that fell into the lake. There was a tsunami event that eroded the frontal moraine and that led to a subsequent glacial lake outburst flood. And the volume that this particular flood actually, the volume of morainic material, the landslide that fell into the lake is 14.7 million cubic meters, which is an enormous volume of solid mass entering into the lake. And what is important is that this particular event has not only caused damage in Sikkim, but it had impacts in West Bengal severely, with so many hydropowers and settlements, communities along the Teesta River have faced transboundary or trans-state impacts, and not only trans-state but also transboundary when we talk about countries, because it also had impacted Bangladesh, which is beyond 300 kilometers from the source of this flood. So this is what happened. This is a supplementary video that went out with the paper that shows the process. We see that, I would play again. You can see a collapse of the lateral moraine from the side lateral moraine of the South Lonak Lake that caused a tsunami. And then, there was subsequent flooding downstream, which eroded a lot of sediments, creating a debris flow and huge destruction downstream. This is what happened. Before the flood, actually, the lateral moraine that collapsed showed a lot of displacements back in years. We tried to look into what happened from 2016 onwards, and we could see that from 2016 or maybe before that, this particular chunk of lateral moraine that failed showed a lot of displacement of approximately on an average of 10 meters per year before it actually collapsed into the lake in 2023 October. This particular GLOF actually released 50,000 million cubic meters, 50 million cubic meters of water. So if I would ask you how much is that water, 28 meter of water level drop from the lake, to give you a perspective, I would just like to give you this perspective of the swimming pool. This is an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and 50 million cubic meters of water that drained out of this lake will be equal to 20,000 Olympic-sized swimming pool. And that is the amount of water that came out of this lake. So now we normally know the perspective of what scale, what magnitude are we talking about. And then, yes, we know this tragic event have led to numerous destruction downstream, where you can see that buildings were submerged under sediments that were carried. But the question remained is, where did the sediments come from and what is the volume? And if I tell you the numbers, you would be shocked to know that it is 270 million cubic meters of sediments that were eroded, which is 5 times or over 5 times more than the lake water that was eroded. And that led to such disastrous debris deposition downstream. And then we quantified all of these using several, in the science paper with, it's a collaborative effort from all. I'd like to thank all the co-authors who have helped me here. Now, the sediments, if I would like to compare and give you a perspective, it's this many numbers of swimming pools together. If you fill the sediments in 108,000 swimming pools, that is the amount of sediments that was eroded. So just imagine the scale that we're talking about. So after the flood, what consequences is been seen in Tista? These are some of the photos coming in from Praful Rao. He is one of the person that I've met. We've done tremendous work for Tista Valley over the years, and really glad to be in touch with him. And of course, information on regular basis coming in from him of what immediately on the monsoon that followed. You could see that near Tista Bazaar, there was bank overfull because of the sediments that were laid down by the Gloss. Many numerous hydropower. Yes, of course, this is a Chungtang. You can see how it was affected. The Chungtang Tista 3 was completely destroyed. You can see the sediments, and not only the Tista 3, but there are other Tista low dam 3, 4, and other hydropowers that were impacted. With my last couple of slides, I would like to point out how destructive these events can be, with lateral erosions and landslides that this enormous energy can lead to. And one of these very important landslide that was triggered in the Lar, which is called the Naga landslide, that has led to slumping of the roads, and also a landslide that happened just below the Lachen village, because of which the village today, Lachen, has been showing some sort of slumping after 2 years of this flood. So these are some of the consequences that we see after the flood. So I think I'm almost on time, but I'd like to skip this particular slide. I do not have time. But just to put down a few important messages before I shut down is, where are these hotspots of glacial lake outburst floods? So modeling this is a recent paper that we published, and I'm really glad that this has come out to be one of the most cited paper recently on where are these hotspots. We can see that Eastern Himalaya is currently the Eastern and Central Himalaya is currently the hotspot for glacial lake outburst flood today. And this particular hotspot is going to shift towards the Karakoram and the Hindu Kush in the future, as the new glacial lake will start forming in the northern part, in the western part. But most of the glaciers in the eastern part are already formed, and they are almost at the maximum state. Coming to transboundary, we can see that there are
Dr.
so many lakes
Sattar,
in the. Yes.
Dr. Sattar, may I request you to conclude within the next minute?
Yes, absolutely. So coming to the transboundary floods, we see that China and India, there's a lot of lakes. You can see that they're located in China, but can have an impact in India. And also we can see a lot of transboundary lakes which are present. So that's also a concern that we should look at. And how we go about reducing this risk, maybe by artificially lowering the lake. This is one of the papers we published where we tried to see, how lowering of the lake. This is one of the biggest lake in Himachal, which is the Gepangat Lake. How lowering can help reducing the glacial lake outburst flood, and modeling can, before implementing any solution, modeling can greatly help you identify or see the effectiveness of such lowering efforts. With that, I would like to thank uh, all of you for your time and your patience. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Sattar. And uh, it is interesting to learn that 2025 has been declared as the International Year for Glacier Preservation. And it is also very fascinating to understand the interaction between the diverse systems and how any change in the cryosphere impacts the lives of people through your schematics. It has been a very enlightening presentation all throughout. But it is also very, very alarming to note that 3 million people are exposed to glacial lake outburst floods in India, and especially considering that example you showed of 50 million cubic meters of water eroding 270 million cubic meters of sediments on the way and rushing down on the downstream communities. It's very, very alarming to note that. But at the same time, it is also encouraging to learn that there are prevention and mitigation possibilities through the lowering of water efforts. And it would be very interesting to understand exactly how we can, go forward on that. Maybe during the open house, our participants can ask you further questions on this, and maybe you can elaborate on that as well. Now, both of our speakers till now have mentioned the very, very adverse and severe impact on the community. When it comes to enhancing the resilience of the community, when it comes to prevention, when it comes to mitigation, through community approaches, intersectionality and inclusion are two very, very major concerns, which is where our next speaker comes in. Mr. Samir Datta is a leader in the very in its in the most fundamental sense, because he has been leading the Indian people science movement. He's a climate justice advocate. He has been associated with UNFCCC for a long time. He initiated the Bharat Jan Gyan Vigyan Jatha. He and the National Children's Science Congress. He has authored numerous books and articles on climate and energy issues. He's a founding member of the India Climate Justice and SAPAC, and it serves on various advisory boards. So it is very interesting to look at his achievements over the years. You can refer to the chat for the information. Gursimran is posting it now. Dr. Mr. Datta, you are very much welcome to this panel. We are very honored to have you here. May I request you to deliberate on inclusion, especially with reference to disability, when it comes to mitigating risks of glacial lake outburst floods and its impact on the communities. You have 10 minutes to share your thoughts, sir.
Ma'am, sir not joined yet. I will check with the sir.
All right. No issues. Maybe we can
But
move on to Mr.
yeah,
Prabhakar Rai,
sure,
especially
sure, ma'am.
given the fact that he is one of the practitioners, although he is a representative of the government of Sikkim. He is one of the practitioners, and we are very, very eager to learn about his experiences. It is a great opportunity to have you with us and to understand the practical reality from one of the most affected states, Sikkim. Uh, Mr. Prabhakar Rai is a Special Secretary of Government of Sikkim and Director in charge of Sikkim State Disaster Management Authority. He has been closely associated with both risk reduction planning and response in the state for the last 15 years and instrumental in ensuring fast and efficient relief service to the people of Sikkim. So my ask from you is to share the ground reality of how you manage the relief response and recovery on the one hand, and about your preparedness and mitigation planning on the other hand, given Sikkim is majorly prone to glacial lake outburst flooding, and given your previous experience in 2023. You have 10 minutes to share your experiences, sir.
Hello, good afternoon. I hope I'm audible. I'm extremely sorry that
Yes.
I'm attending this VC meeting from Vigyan Bhawan, New Delhi, as another meeting is going on. But I'm pleased to be here amongst the eminent personalities like Professor Anil Gupta sir, Asim Sattar, and others. So I think without wasting much of your time, I think I'll proceed with my presentation. So, as you, I would like to request uh, this change of the slides, please. Yeah, you can see the South Lona Glacier at the map, which is located out there. And in fact, regarding this, my dear friend Asim Sattar has already mentioned about all the details, so which on which I would not like to dwell upon. Basically, I'm here to more concerned about the challenges and strategies for risk reduction. So, next slide, please. October 2023, 3rd of October 2023.
Sir, we are unable to hear you.
Was in the river was from IGP camp located at Janak. So later on, we came to understand in the next hours, a few hours afterwards, that uh, the river had swollen up and a flash flood had, in fact, been generated. Next slide, please. So I'll just request for the change of slides on a faster scale so that I'll be able to finish my presentation within time. Next slide, please.
Gursimran, if you can support, sir.
Ma- Madam, actually, I'm using my mobile phone, so,
No
so
problem,
anyway,
sir. No problem.
yeah. So,
Gursimran will be changing the slides faster, sir.
okay. So basically, the chain of events were as such that the state administration swung into action, and in the lower belts like Singtam, Adarskau, and Rangpo and the Malli areas, people were taken out from their houses. In fact, they were put on alert that the water level has been rising, so you are supposed to come out. But eventually, what I would like to mention here is that we had been conducting this preparatory drills and mock exercises all along the Tista basin, starting from Lachen itself. So we had mock exercise in the Tista Hydro project at Chungthang 2. That was in May. It was done in exercise was carried out at the dam site itself, wherein people of Chungthang were asked to leave their houses immediately if any alert is generated. So that's how the people of Chungthang, at that precise timing, they left their houses, evacuated the whole Chungthang town, and went to a place identified as the relief camp or relief center called Bob. So that's the reason why we could save plenty of lives from Chungthang. Likewise, the Honorable Chief Minister visited the sites, and a flurry of dignitaries from the national level also came over to visit the disaster struck state in the forthcoming days. Yes, you can see the chain of events which had happened. The district authorities were the first ones, and we had our own police force. We had our forest officials. We had our own SDRF personnel who swung into action immediately. Likewise, a notification on disaster, a declaration of disaster was issued at the state by the state government at the state level. Next, please. Next slide. In all the areas located along the river and belt was carried out, and in fact, the police force were the first ones to reach the had the from the NDRF team, but unfortunately, due to inclement weather, the NDRF personnel were not able to be airlifted to Chungthang and beyond that those places. So we had a tough time during that time. In fact, the weather was not favorable at all. The road connectivity was totally washed out. and we had the national highway was totally disrupted. So that these are the some of the challenges which we faced. But eventually, as resilient human beings of the hills, we were able to cope up with all the adversities. And in fact, one issue was that all the laborers who were in Sikkim during that time, who hailed from Bihar and other neighboring states, were transported back immediately after were opened. So through S&T buses, state services, so that they could reach their houses safely. And almost around 2,000 tourists who were stuck in the northern areas of the state were evacuated immediately by road as well as by trekking at some particular places along the landslide areas. So the information percolated down to the national level, wherein what content of disaster had we experienced during that time. So emergency services were immediately. Yeah, next slide, please. I can show you the some photographs. Uh, yes. Hello. Yeah, you can see the police personnel, and in fact, in the third side, there's a video. Actually, I don't want to waste your time. It's the honorable minister or the area MLA of Lachen Mangan who traversed through the jeep line towards crossing to Chungthang in that treacherous time. That was on 5th of October 2023. Next slide, please. Next. Kindly move ahead. Kindly move ahead with the slides. So, okay, yeah, even if the slides are not operative, I would like to mention here that basic challenges faced by the state during that time was a rescue and relief operation, because the road connectivity was totally off during that time, and uh, traversing through the place of Thang and beyond those places was out of question. And although that was out of question, the road network being disrupted, the people or the state administration people or the relief and the operative people across to Chungtang via trekking through traversing through the treacherous landslide zone areas. And relief operations were carried out immediately by the state government. Next, please. Can we move ahead, please? Yeah, the slides, please. These are some of the pictures wherein state officials as well as in fact people from the national level also came over. And when the weather became clear, the tourists were some of the left out tourists who were stuck in Lachen to Pakyong. Next slide. I'm so sorry that the communication network is quite poor, and in fact, being in a meeting, I just came up and I'm attending this. So these are some of the figures, major damages which has affected by the flash flood. 100, almost 100 villages were affected. We had a loss of lives too, and the missing persons were there who had who were declared dead after we obtained approval from the government of India, because as per the custom, or rather the procedure, or a missing person can be declared dead only after a period of 7 years. But eventually, we managed to get the concerned approval from the government of India, declaring all the all the missing persons as dead, so that the relief could be provided to their next to kith and kin from the state, as per the SDRF, NDRF norms, items of norms, as well as from the PM office too. Next, please. So these are some of the photographs of the places which were affected. So the impact of blow-off has been far-reaching and it's irreversible. So the state has been coping up, and we had the media exercise carried out wherein 2192 crores was the losses which was projected, and reconstruction at state level. So I think gone beyond my timing. So the presentation could be shared with all so that they can.
Uh, we cannot hear you anymore. Um, are you there?
Hello, hello.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I think I would like to finish here only because I don't want to waste your time. I want to take
Yeah.
other speakers' time. So the presentation could be shared with everybody so that they can go through it. And in fact, I need to go and attend the meeting. I'm extremely sorry to all the participants as well as Sphere India. And on behalf of Professor V.K. Sharma, I was representing, but unfortunately, due to this meeting, I was not able to attend it properly. Nevertheless, in the future, I would definitely be with you, and I would eagerly wait communication amongst us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And we really appreciate your commitment in sharing your experiences despite conflicting work schedules and very, very challenging network connectivity. We will
Yeah.
definitely ensure that the presentation is shared all throughout. And it was
Sure,
very
sure.
interesting to learn that the preparedness planning, coordination, and convergence, and definitely the mock drills contributed to the faster evacuation and response operations. It is
Sure.
also very heartening to note the commitment of the local actors, whether officials like yourself or political representatives. But local capacity seems to be the one area which needs greater focus and attention from all of us, I think, because, I
Sure.
mean, especially in scenarios where designated rescue forces cannot access the affected area on time. But
Yeah.
kudos to the Sikkim State Disaster Management Authority for coordinating and managing the emergency appropriately. We have been hearing a lot about um, from Dr. Sattar's presentation, we understood we could see where the current hotspots are, and which direction they're supposed to move towards.
Yeah.
Our next speaker is Professor Parvez Ahmed, and Professor
Yeah.
Parvez Ahmed is a professor and a head of geography and disaster management at the University of Kashmir. With over 19 years of experience, he specializes in environmental geography, climate studies, and remote sensing. He has led significant research on Himalayan glaciers, authored over 90 papers, and collaborates with top institutions on climate resilience and environmental management in the Himalayas. What is very, very significant is Dr. Sattar's presentation mentioned that at this point of time, the hotspots are concentrated more towards the eastern side, and that scenario is likely to change, and this trend could be towards the Karakoram Mountains. So this makes it even more important. This makes it even more critical to understand um, how to identify potentially dangerous glacial lakes in the Kashmir Himalayas. So, sir, may I request your perspective on the methodologies and approaches for identifying potentially dangerous glacial lakes in Kashmir Himalayas? You have 10 minutes to share your thoughts.
Okay. Thank you, Debarita. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm thankful to Saphir India for providing me an opportunity to basically interact with uh, uh, with such galaxy of people with different specialties, expertise. So importantly, I would basically, I know Dr. Ashim Satar has already basically deliberated on the hotspots, and he must definitely has identified our area also as one of the hotspots of glacial lake outburst floods. So importantly, what I would basically delve upon is that what is the methodological approach that we need to basically adopt for identification of these dangerous glacial lakes, which could basically be a potential for a GLOF event in the future. So importantly, if I can straight away. So I'm thankful to Sphere India also. Can I share the presentation? Is the presentation visible?
Not yet.
Not
I think it's loading maybe. Gusimran, can you support?
yes, ma'am.
Is it visible now?
Yes, it is.
Ye-
Sir, can you put it on PowerPoint show mode?
Is
Yes. I hope it will come soon.
is it moving?
It is moving. Sir, if you could
Okay,
move it to the PowerPoint presentation mode.
okay. I'm doing it. Oh,
Yes.
sorry. Is it okay now?
Yes, sir.
Is it okay?
It's
Yeah, okay,
absolutely
fine.
fine. Thank
Fine,
you.
fine, fine. Thank you. Thank you. So, this particular presentation is methodological approach for identification of potentially dangerous glacial lakes in Kashmir Himalayas. I was basically, that we are already aware about this fact that globs or catastrophic events in they occur when the water dammed by a glacier or moraine is suddenly released. Importantly, in the UT of Jammu and Kashmir, the potential for glass is significant due to the presence of nuclear glaciers and glacier lakes, because we keep in more than 100 and 120 glaciers, and then you have the glacial lakes also. So importantly, we need to keep in mind that we need to keep in mind that these GLOFs, basically these high hazard glacial lakes, pose severe threats to downstream communities, infrastructure ecosystems, and severely disrupt the livelihood of the mountain communities. So importantly, I would basically you have these loft triggers and mechanisms. I won't be discussing that, but importantly, I'd move to this particular study, wherein the present study focused on the assessment of risks from GLOFs in the UT of Jammu and Kashmir. Important, the UT of J&K region is a vital source of fresh water for the populated areas downstream, and the changing precipitation regimes and the increasing temperature over the region is a major concern for the snow cover and glacier health. Because over the period of time, what we have been understanding is that the climatic regime has changed, the precipitation regime has changed, the temperature regime has changed, and this has basically, because under this changing climatic regime, it has an impact on the health of the glaciers and the consequent expansion of glacial lakes, and then understanding that what could be the future of these basically glacial lakes. So what we did is basically we employed a remote sensing based technique, wherein glacial lake mapping was basically done. For glacial lake extraction, we used a normalized difference water index, NDWI. So wherein we took the green band and the infrared band of the spectral bands, and they were basically used to distinguish water bodies from other land cover types. So importantly, what I would like to basically emphasize is that we need to basically adopt a methodology wherein we need to basically identify the parameters on the basis of which we could basically study these glacial lakes, so that we could basically identify and then categorize these lakes into high hazard lakes and moderately hazard lakes or low hazard lakes. So importantly, so for that we need to basically adopt a methodology, and there have been methodologies which are already in place, but over the period of time, some national organizations, particularly National Disaster Management Authority (NDMA) and Central Water Commission, they have basically worked on it, so that on the basis of global standards, we could basically identify a methodology, identify the key parameters which could be basically studied, so that we could understand the mechanism of glacial gloss and then subsequent consequence. So this particular study, what we did is we basically selected out of the long list of global parameters, we basically adopted a criteria which has been set up by the National Disaster Management Authority (NDMA), and then we selected those 13 parameters. These 13 parameters were lake area, lake expansion, dam height, distance to glacier, dam town slope, potential mass movement, slope between glacier and lake, freeboard, ice carving activity, drainage type, presence of lake in the upstream region, distance to settlement, elevation. All these 13 parameters were basically taken, and on the basis of that, we were able to identify 68 potentially dangerous glacial lakes in the region. Keeping in mind that these parameters are they can be used in any part of the world, and they can be used in any part of Himalayas, and that is true about them. But important is that in certain cases, under different physiographic conditions, maybe a particular parameter gets more weightage in comparison to the other parameter. So importantly, we basically listed those all parameters, and on the basis of where we assigned weightages to these parameters, and on the basis of that, we could basically categorize them, these lakes, into different categories, and achieve this target of basically identifying the potential lakes. So in all, what we did is, in the 20 districts of J&K, we basically identified these lakes, and once we identified these lakes, we basically identified the 68 potentially dangerous lakes. So what we do is that total number of lakes which we basically had is 617, and out of these 617, they were very small on the base of area and the number of lakes. So we had very small lakes, we had small lakes, we had medium lakes, we had large lakes, we had very large lakes. And out of these 617 lakes, 306 were categorized under the very small lake category, 245 under the small lakes, medium 59, large lakes 5, and very large lakes 2. So total it make so, the total number was 617. And out of these 617, these lakes were in different elevation zones, because importantly, what I've already identified or pointed out, that elevation is one of the criterions. Yes, the size of the lake is one of the criterions, but the elevation is another criterion, because that also basically gives you an element which we call as slope. And slope has a very major role to play when it comes to the water basically discharging from the lake and moving downstream and affecting the communities down. So we divided these lakes into various elevation zones. So they were below 3,500 meters, 3,500 to 4,000, 4,000 to 4,500, 4,500 to 5,000, and above 5,000. So there were less number of lakes in above 5,000-meter category. So there were only four, and below 3,500 there were only seven. So most of the lakes were between 3,500 to 5,000 meters category, and that is particularly between 3,500 to 4,500. So on the basis of that, we basically identified 68 lakes across all districts of J&K, and which we categorize as potentially dangerous glacial lakes. So in the high category, we had 11 lakes. We had medium 22 lakes in the medium category, low 21, and very low in the 13 in the very low category. So this is this. So what we did is, district wise, we basically identified these lakes and put them into different categories, and then we gave a hazard rank to them also, because importantly, when you talk in terms of policy making, when you policy formulation, you need to basically have a good know-how of ground situation. That what's the situation of the ground? Because importantly, we have to understand that this 4th October 2023 skim disaster, South Lonak Lake, which basically, it was something which basically created a notion, or created an interest in the glacial lake outburst floods. All the Himalayan states made where they became conscious of this fact that this type of disaster which happened in Skim could be repeated in any of the Himalayan states. And keeping in mind that J&K is also a disaster prone area, we talk about a disaster, and this is there, minus tsunami, you have all types of disasters here. And GLOF was one potential disaster which had to be taken care of. So importantly, what we did is that we basically categorized them into different categories, and then we gave them ranks so that when the government basically or the organizations which are basically concerned with this particular thing, particularly government agencies, they could basically work on these policies, and they could basically categorize and prioritize them in according to their ranks. So what we did is we gave them ranks. Or, for example, in Bandipora, we had hazard rank 1. In Gandharbal district, we had hazard rank 5. So Anantnag had second, Kulgam had third, Kishtawad had four, Gandharbal had five. So we ranked the districts according to their hazard this also. So in Kashmir and Jammu, we division, because Jammu and Kashmir has two divisions. So Kashmir and Jammu. So there also we basically put in Kashmir we had eight in the high hazard this, and in Jammu we had three in the high hazard category. So we gave a ranking within the division also, with Kashmir having a hazard rank 1 and Jammu having a hazard rank 2. But that doesn't mean that we have to basically be complacent. We need to basically adopt a strategy where we basically establish, we know that what type of physical activity can take place and what could be its impact on the downstream communities, on the social systems. So we tried to basically also look at how over the period of time this glacial lake area has increased, because that is again one of the indicators which could point out to glacial lake outburst floods in the future. So in 1985 we had 18.24 square kilometers under that is the total area under glacial lakes, and in 2024 it has increased to 19.77 square kilometers. So our total change of 1.53 square kilometers, keeping in mind that our glaciers are retreating, our the melting rate is the rate of melting has increased over the period of time, and secondly the precipitation regime has also basically changed, and as a result of that the input to the glaciers, which could have basically led to the increase in the mass of the glacial mass, has also basically impacted because of less input to the glaciers. So importantly, what has happened? So rate of melting and more glacial lake formation taking place, and the glacial lake area increasing. So, particularly then we identified certain lakes. We have given them lake IDs 42, 68, and 40. So we could basically see that how the area in particular lakes, like say Lake ID 42, how it has increased over the period of time. And you can see that this Lake 42, which has a ID of 42, which over the period of time, that means in the last 50, 40, 45 years, its area has increased by 176%. So you can automatically you can understand that what could be its potential, how it has basically changed or transformed into a potentially dangerous glacial lake. So these are different images which basically show this particular lake, this which I already mentioned in Lake 42, how it has over the period of time, how this lake. So I've started from 2011, 2012, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 21, 24, 20. So over the period of time, we have basically tried to understand that how this lake over the period of time has changed its dimensions, so increasing its hazard vulnerability. So this is the lake. This is the 0.47. It was in 2024. In 1980, it was just 0.17 square kilometers, and it has increased to 0.47 kilometers. So basically, pointing out to this fact that this could be a potential for a dangerous lake in the future. So, this basically study helped us that we could basically give weightage to different criterions, and then check those criterions in the field, and then basically on the basis of list down those parameters which are which are more important, or which are more significant in our union territory, that's J&K. So we have basically, these were the different types of inventories which were basically done by different people. For example, National Remote Sensing Center, Hyderabad, they had identified these six criteria on the basis of which they had basically mapped the glacial lakes in J&K. And then we had Chenab Basin, Das et al. In 2024, they had taken up these 10 criterions. You see, there was an individual study by Guru et al. In 2019. They had identified nine parameters on the basis of which they had mapped. But this particular study basically used 13 parameters, which was these 13 parameters were used to identify these 65 lakes and put them into different categories. So this is an image of how we have basically categorized these lakes into high vulnerable lakes, those which have a high index. So this is the hazard value: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So different here. So I'm just including. So this study basically pointed out to this fact that the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir has a substantial number of glacial lakes, 616, which are distributed unevenly across its districts, with Kishtawad and Bandipora having the highest concentration. Then we basically need that the majority of the glacial lakes are very small, with only a few large and very large lakes, indicating a wide range in lake size classes. Elevation influence is one of the important criterions. We see most of the lakes are between 3,500 to 4,500 meters. And then we see that there are methodological variations. One of the important focus of this particular study was to basically uh, uh, put a fraud framework, methodological framework for undergoing GLOF studies, which we substantially succeeded in identifying those parameters which are more instrumental in initiating this GLOF activity in the Himalayas. And then, so total of 67 dangerous glacial lakes were identified, and with 11 classified as high hazards. So importantly, one of the important recommendations of this study was in-situ studies are recommended for those lakes which are high hazard A category lakes, to better understand the risks and to develop appropriate mitigation strategies. So the important is that we need to basically work on identifying the methodological framework for working on GLOF studies, so that the studies which we basically do, they are basically, they are more close to the reality, and we could, so that we could basically formulate policies and strategies which are very close to the reality, and they could basically help us in making disaster resilient societies.
Thank you, sir. It was actually pretty fascinating to learn about the normalized difference water index and the 13 parameters that you shared to assess and identify the 68 potentially dangerous glacial lakes. It would be really good if you could also point the participants towards further references to this concept in the
Yes,
chat box as well.
exactly.
Because I think it's not only fascinating to understand this concept, but it is also critically imperative. Because as more glacial lakes keep getting formed and expanding in diameter and size, it is imperative that practitioners can understand how to utilize the fundamentals that have been shared today in ensuring their work remains relevant in these particular geographical areas.
Yes, exactly.
So that would be really kind of you.
Oh, sure,
Thank you,
sure,
sir.
sure. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. And I have already introduced Mr. Shomya Datta, and I'm requesting sir to deliberate on inclusion, especially with reference to disability and other intersectionality, of course, when it comes to mitigating risks of glacial lake outburst floods, given the very important fact that all these kind of fundamentals that all our speakers have been talking about, those are currently pointing towards high risk and very intense impact on the community. And it is very important that for the resilience, to enhance the resilience, to enhance the adaptive capacity of the community, um, we need to understand how do we ensure that the community has all the tools in hand for the mitigation of risks, for preparedness, and for anticipatory action. And when we talk about any kind of community approaches, intersectionality and inclusion are two very, very major concerns. So I would request Mr. Samya Datta to talk about this. And sir, you have 10 minutes to share your thoughts. Gursimran, is Mr. Datta there?
Yes, ma'am. Sir will be join with in few minutes just.
In that case, maybe we can ask Ms. Sneha Kaur to share her study and her findings with us, and then we can go back to Mr. Datta.
Okay, ma'am.
Right?
Yeah.
Please let me know when he's able to join. So I will move on
Sure.
to Ms. Neha Kaur. She is representing Birla Institute of Technology, Mesra, and I'm very excited to have her with us because she is a perfect example of young leadership in this sector. She is a PhD scholar in remote sensing in BIT Mesra, and she specializes in Earth observation for disaster assessment and has a master's in geospatial science. She also volunteers with IEEE and
Sorry to
focuses on
interrupt
disaster
you,
risk.
ma'am. Uh, Sir is joined.
No problem. Let Miss
I'm
Kaur.
really sorry. If I could actually present because my laptop is at 20%. So I'm really
No
sorry.
issues, Dr. Sneha. We will be requesting you to come forth, and since your presentation is already on screen,
Yeah,
and
I'll
I would
share it from
request you
my
to share
side.
your reflections on the advancements in remote sensing and early warning when it comes
Yes.
to glacial lake outburst floods, and you have 10 minutes to share your
Right.
analysis.
So I have a very short presentation. I hope you can see my screen, right?
Yes, you are audible
Uh,
and your screen is visible, but please put it on PowerPoint
yeah,
show.
I'll do that. Okay. So I've just I won't even take 10 minutes. It's a very small presentation. And I will be talking about how remote sensing is working in disaster management and GLOF, as well as how AI, ML, and deep learning can help us. Okay, so we start with this is a simple diagram you may have seen today. You may have seen on the internet, but hazard here due to climate change is now influenced by climate, right? As well as uh, other natural um, uh, sorry, other natural elements. And vulnerability here means our social economic indicators or processes, and exposure will be our population density or the number of population which is exposed to such hazards. And all of these, overlap to create risk, right? This is the overall GLOF, where GLOF actually takes place all over the global coverage or the global occurrence, right? I'll turn into disaster management. So this disaster management cycle shows how and where um, we can use a remote sensing, right? So we have a emergency event or a disaster event. It is, you know, after that we have our response, our rescue, and we were seeing from Sikkim's government that how they did rescue and response for the disaster. We have our post-disaster scenario where we do reconstruction, and we do risk mitigation, and pre-disaster where we actually do the risk assessment beforehand. Now, the for disaster preparedness or emergency planning, we have two major things or two major plannings which we need to do: long term and short term. For short term planning, early warning is very much important because it gives us an idea about or predicts us where we can where which is the area which will give you or which will have the hazard. What Why early warning system is important, or what is an early warning system? It is a system which has a coordinated set of measures that help us detect and forecast hazards, which then provides timely alerts, which will help us to minimize risk, protect lives, and safeguard property. As we can see, this is uh, a statistical example that the damage caused by a disaster can be reduced by 30% if we have an early warning within 24 hours. So, early warning is very much critical in managing hazards, and these systems provide a valuable time for governments or communities to prepare themselves and respond to hazards. So, what are the characteristics of these early warning systems? What all is in these early warning systems? So, we have a total of five things: uh, timely alerts, five and six things. Timely alerts. These early warning systems give us alerts before a potential hazard, which helps us and gives us adequate time for preparedness. We have effective communication, which is given out to hard to reach populations or at risk populations. You might, this is for gloves, but it is very common in the part of India I stay in West Bengal, and which is very frequently connected with cyclones. So I don't know if we have someone from Bengal or Odisha. We get SMS alerts, that the cyclone is coming. Similarly, early warning system for gloves can also be there for any disaster. uh, we can be adopting early warning systems. For early warning systems to work effectively, we should have risk knowledge. uh, Also, early warning system provides us with mitigation measures and preparedness and response capabilities, and help us foster community resilience. So, well, what actually pushed us to have an early warning system? So uh, we started with a natural disaster reduction in 1989 to 99. Then we had our early warning systems for natural disasters in 22. We had some frameworks like DRR frameworks. And right now, we have early warning for all, uh, which is that the UN Secretary General has called that every person on the earth should be protected by early warning systems within the next 5 years, that is by 2027, now 4 years. Uh, and this has happened in 2022. And we will be, all the governments all over the world globally have started these early warning systems. So, if we see what are the four pillars of early warning, we have disaster risk knowledge and management, we have a detection, observation, and monitoring, which is led by WMO. Disaster risk knowledge is led by
If you
DL,
can finish within the next 1 minute, please.
Tiara, great. Okay, so the technology involved in EWS is blockchain, are alerts, AIML, and Earth observation data. So, so I'll just take 2 more minutes. I'm really sorry. I just have 20 slides. So, what is remote sensing is something I hope the audience is aware of. Then I'll just move on with Earth observation data, different types of Earth observation data, and citizen science data. We can help prepare a framework for these early warnings. And I'll skip this. Then we have machine learnings techniques. um, we have three types of machine learning, uh, actually four. But this we have supervised, non-supervised, and semi-supervised. Okay. uh, this is a very important part which I actually want to explain for a minute, which is that we have a lot of supervised, unsupervised deep learning, and all learning models. which actually apply in each and every phase of the disaster management cycle. Okay, and we have forecastings and disaster evacuations in event managing, event mapping, damage assessment, as well as there's a thing called disaster digital twin. This is also a budding technology which is being is very coming up with the help of earth observation and remote sensing. These are actually two examples how we can use these remote sensing and earth observation datas for flood modeling, these GLOF flood modeling, and getting to know the potentially like potentially are potentially disasters of like are the glacial lakes which are potentially disastrous. And we also can have like indices, as we have indices for droughts and floods. We have indices for cloughs as well. It is NDSI, snow index. And I would actually just skip this then, and I would just actually say that we all, everyone in the audience, will find ourselves in this tree. Okay, somewhere which we will be doing disaster management, or we are working with the community. So lastly, if we come together, uh, collaboration is a key, where each and every speaker comes from a different background, and the collaboration will help us to social good and disaster risk reduction and resilience. Thank you so much. I'll just stop presenting. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sneha, for the very
Yeah,
detailed presentation on early warning and remote sensing and the types of data that is required. It was we were actually very interested in learning that the later part of your presentation mostly where
yeah,
you were talking about the machine learning data and the
yes,
digital
actually,
applications and the AI applications and all those things. Those are very very interesting, and I hope you will put in the chat box some reference links if our participants are further
I would
interested to learn about this.
I would
And
definitely do that.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Swear India, so much. And thank you, everyone.
Yeah. It is interesting to understand how you are using remote sensing data for GLOF modeling. You know, there was one more youth leader who came to one of these webinars sometime back, a couple of months back, who was also talking about voluntary disaster mapping, and he is one of the leading proponents of it. He is from Bangladesh, and that is another concept that is very useful in plotting hotspots across the world, in understanding the impact on the community and identifying hotspots. So that is also something very welcome. So thank you, Sneha, for being here. Our last speaker of the day is Dr. Vinay Gaddam from Vijayawada. Dr. Gaddam is an associate professor of civil engineering at Velagapudi Ramakrishna Siddhartha Engineering College. He specializes in remote sensing, GIS, environmental engineering, and water resources. With over 13 years of experience, he has authored impactful research papers, secured major grants, and received several awards. His research focuses on using geospatial technologies and, in fact, machine learning to address environmental and climate challenges. Dr. Kaddam, we are most interested in learning about your analysis of glacier health and climate change, especially in the context of retreat and stability. You have 10 minutes to share your findings. We are already running 3 minutes over time. So once Dr. Gaddam finishes, we will allow another 10 minutes for any comments or suggestions, and then we were hoping to close the session after that. I'm begging the indulgence of the participants here, and over to you, Dr. Gaddam.
Hello.
Yes, Dr. Gaddam, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Is my screen is audible? Sorry, visible?
Not yet. I think it's loading maybe. Yes, it's there. Please
It's
put this
there.
on PowerPoint show mode, sir.
Thanks for inviting Spear India on the World Glacier Preservation Day. And I'm thankful for the management people who is allowing me to present the topic on observation of glaciers. We at Siddhartha University we are working on the glaciers which are located in different parts of India. Especially here, you can see the four basins. Left side top, it is the Chandra Basin, where most of the glaciers are now turning into the glacial, means the glaciers associated with the lakes. And on the right hand side, that is the Baspa Basin, where the many villages are located downstream. And here, one of the interesting observation is their down 300 megawatt hydropower station is located, and all these glaciers and the seasonal snow melt will feed the hydropower station here. And we are also working on two other basins, Parbati Valley and the Sikkim Valley, where the glaciers are more prone to the glacial lake overflows. Here, I wanted to show how the glaciers are sustaining in this climatic change scenario, and how these are turning into the glacial lakes. If you can see here, this is the basin which we are focused more on the estimation of mass balance, the glacial retreat, and the supply of meltwater to the hydropower station, which is located downstream here at the Wangtu Kacham plant. Here, if you can see this slide shows the estimates of the glacial retreat since of 40 years. And there are numerous inventories like Randolph Glacier inventory and Isimode inventory and GSI inventory, because many people who are working as the organizations, they are trying to estimate how much is the exact glacier area in the entire India, and also they wanted to know how much is the volume which is stored in the form of ice in glaciers. So now if you can see here, there are lot many uncertainties in the glacial polygons which are leading to the erroneous results and erroneous estimates of the glaciers. If you can see the slide here, this outline which is representing the glacial outlet and the debris cover. This is the outline which was missed in the runoff glacier inventory, and this was identified by the field observations. And this is the one of the picture which was taken near the Baspa Bamak glacier, where it is more prone to the formation of glacial lake outburst floods. And you can see this slide is a better example that how the glaciers are reacting to the climate change and how they are thinning in this anthropogenic scenarios. If you can see the upper images, you can see on the satellite images the permanent snow which is stayed there on above 5000 meters, more than 5000 meters. Now it is shrinking, and it is now turning into the permafrost region, where it is highly prone to the formation of lakes. And even the debris covered tongues which are associated with the lakes, now they are being turning up into the glacial lake outburst floods, if they are associated at the steep strips. And when the glaciers are reacting to the climate change, these glaciers will adjust to the local climate or the microclimate by adjusting its seasonal snowline, which is known as the key indicator of its health. That is also important to understand the dynamics of the snowline, because it is directly related with the health of the glacier, which we glaciologists call as mass balance. Here, if you can see that in one of our paper, we have used the image segmentation method, and we have segregated the snow from the non-snow cover area, and we have estimated the variations on the seasonal cycle, where we can observe that the highest snowline altitude is observed at the end of the abrasion period. And using as the previous speaker told that we are also implementing the machine learning methods to understand the dynamics of the seasonal snowline in different basins. This is one of the case study which we have carried out in Parbati Valley, and we have used multiple machine learning methods like cascade method, K-means method, and supervised classification methods to understand the significance of the seasonal snowline altitude in supplying the fresh snow for the feeding of the glacier. And once the snowline adjusts to the local climate, then the glacier starts reacting to the climate by adjusting its mass, and that is known as the mass balance. And here, to get the mass balance in the glacier, means of the glaciers, it is quite difficult to understand the glaciers mass balance in the field, because lot many people have studied the mass balance using traditional glaciological method. But here, by using the remote sensing methods, we have used three different approaches. By using the seasonal sensitivity characteristics, means which defines how the glacier is sensitive to the temperature as well as precipitation. And also we have used the geodetic method, means by taking the difference of two elevation models taken at different time periods of the same geographical region, then we have assessed how much is the change in ice volume in the upper accumulation area. And also we validated that with the available field measurements and the uh, laser photons which is available from the satellite ISAT. And then we understood how much is the loss of ice mass in for the past 30-40 years. And then we understand that the steep slope areas and the areas which are associated with lakes, there are having a lot of huge ice mass loss. And these ice masses are now turning up into the lakes, which are very prone to the which are very prone to the floods if they are associated with the cloudburst phenomena or the slope failure. This is one of the example where we in which we understood. We have estimated the mass balance of all the glaciers located in the Baspa Basin using temperature index method, and by plotting the mean mass balance of the entire basin, we can understand that at an altitude of 4,250 meters to almost 4,600 meters, there was a higher mass loss when compared to the other altitudes which are located at below 4,000 meters. What it says is these areas are higher prone to the lakes which are forming a downslope. And by understanding how much is the thickness formation of ice in that particular altitudes, give us a clue that how much of the volume will store and it will react as a glacial lake outburst flood. And to derive the mass balance itself in the field is very difficult, and to derive the volume we have to certainly dependent on the modeling techniques. And here this we have used the ice flow equation to model the ice volume. This is one of the slide which shows the surface velocity which were derived in different parts of the glacier, and which are validated against the cosine for measurements and with the Golev measurements. And it says all are almost correlated well, and which has a good correlation. And then by used the ice flow equation to derive the ice thickness volume which is distributed among 4,000 meters to almost 6,000 meters. And then we converted that into volumetric measurements where we can understand how much is the volume stored in form of ice. Here in this basin, we can understand that the Baspa Bamak has the highest volume, and now this is located at the altitude of 4,200 meters to almost 6,000 meters, and this glacier is now converting into the lakes where there are a lot of cryocast features are observed on the glacier tongue. And these glaciers, as a glaciologist, these glaciers are identified only in term of summer. But when compared to the seasonal drift, like when the glaciers are completely covered with seasonal snow, like you can see in the left hand side figure of snow cover, where the complete basin is covered with the snow cover, the melt will also come from the snow. And there is a serious question that if there is a water which is increasing like in terms of rainfall, how much is the contribution from snow melt? So as in the climate change scenarios, as many people are saying that the snow is decreasing and the rainfall is increasing at higher altitudes, what may be the phenomena which is causing the rainfall rather than the snowfall at these higher altitudes? So for that, what we did, we have estimated how much is the contribution of snow melt and ice melt from by using snow melt runoff model, which is highly dependent on temperature index approach, and we also validated that with the field measurements. And then we compared these hydrological components with the field estimates, then we came to know that the runoff was increased since past 25 years. It is in increasing trend. And once this runoff is increased, once the runoff pattern is being increasing, then the whatever the volume of glaciers is stored in form of ice, it will start melting due to the higher temperatures and the lower snowfall feeding into the higher altitudes of the glaciers. And soon these glaciated terrain will become the permafrost regions, and that permafrost regions will turn up into the lakes, and those lakes will also get dried due to the increasing temperatures. This is one of the graph which says that the rainfall is declining and the temperatures are increasing. Here, if you can see this graph, what the observation here, it is suggesting that there is a rise of almost 1.1 degree for the past 110 years. And the major factors affecting this in this particular basin is the black carbon deposition, soot deposition, which is being emitted by the forest fires, and the natural the natural dust deposition, which is being eroded by the wind. This is one of the figure which shows how the dust is being transferred through wind on the glaciers in the upper part of the Himalayan region. So what we have come up with this is we have come with a small invention, that the atmospheric water supply system, because once the upper regions have become the snow free regions, then the people who are staying there will become highly dependent on the water, and from where they will get the water. So what we have done is we have generated a small prototype model which is known as atmospheric water supply system, which sucks the water vapor from the atmosphere and then it turns into the drinkable water by using the environmental engineering techniques. So this is one of the model which was created in our lab, and soon we are going to bring the compact model and to be distributed in the higher reaches, which will be helpful for the humans, and for the dryland agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Right on time. Your presentation was very illuminating in exemplifying the complex dynamics that you shared, and use of machine learning and other types of data to understand the mass balance, ice volume, runoff, and other estimation approaches and models. Um, it would be really nice if you could share any kind of reference link or reference materials in the chat for our participants.
Sure, ma'am. I will send the presentation.
That would
Thank
be
you.
really wonderful. And I'm also requesting all other panelists to share their presentations as well with Gursimran, so that he can share them with all our participants as reference material after the webinar, along with other reference materials and links provided by the esteemed panelists on chat. If there is any question, suggestion, comments, any concerns that you want to raise from the panelists, from the participants who are present with us, it's most welcome. We will take another 3-4 minutes to see if there is anything in the chat. Otherwise, we will just go on to the conclusion. All right. I think there's a number of posts um, from the participants. Mr. Ganesh Chandra Khanal has shared that because of the raised riverbed, water would flow at much higher elevation and with high intensity during rainy monsoon spell. This is the most important issue for now. He has also mentioned that um, topic of post-cloud disaster issues like in the Tissa River Basin should have been raised. Mr. Khanal, it was raised and there were several analyses presented by the subject matter experts. I presume you might have missed the previous presentations. Someone from the Sikkim Disaster Management Authority was also with us, who shared how it was responded to. Apart from that, any other? So I don't think there are any other comments or suggestions. In case you have any comments or suggestions that you want to share with us or want some answers to from our esteemed panelists, please feel free to write to Gursimran from Sphere India Academy, and we will try to ensure that you get your responses over mail. In the meantime, may I just extend my heartfelt gratitude to not only Sphere India Academy and ICARS for organizing this excellent panel of speakers and coordinating the entire process and organizing the webinar on a topic which is very, very critical yet quite unexplored or mostly unexplored till date, apart from a small minority of subject matter experts. So this was very appropriate, very timely, very relevant. And thank you all for being here with us. Thank you all the subject matter experts, young and seniors and experienced ones. And in different areas, you have presented your findings, your analysis, your recommendations, and those have been very, very enlightening, very, very illuminating. And I hope it will help everyone to understand exactly how to take this work forward in future, uh, define pathways. And if you think that we need a follow-up webinar on these subjects, on these issues, please feel free to write to us and we'll be happy to organize a follow-up webinar on the same. I also would like to take this opportunity to thank all the participants over here for their patience. And I know I could see some very old friends over here, and uh, they are also major experts in their own right. And thank you for being here with us. Thank you for this excellent session. And I'm sorry, my apologies for running a bit over time. And since there is no other suggestions and comments, we would like to close it here. And Gursimran will be sharing all the presentations with you once this webinar is over. Thank you and have a great evening and weekend.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.